President Zuma's corruption case postponed yet again. Just a short pause until next Wednesday in court to support him. As Magashule, as you've just seen, Magashule on Friday, of course, lodged court papers to not only challenge his suspension by the ANC, but also to enforce his own attempts to suspend party president Cyril Ramaphosa. Now, as we watch a 22-year-old corruption story drag on, the arms deal of 1999, one wonders if the rifts in the party will deepen or continue to rumble on. And I'm joined now by author and executive chairperson of Democracy Works at Wits School of Governance, Professor William Gumede. Prof, thank you so much for your time this evening. You know, it's all moving so quickly. We've just heard that the ANC is absolutely going to be challenging in court Ace Magashule's attempt to get the courts to overturn his own suspension and enforce Cyril Ramaphosa's. I'm wondering what you made of Ace Magashule's stance today outside court. He was pretty defiant.
No, absolutely. I think now the crisis is snowballing, clearly. What Ace Magashule is going to do together with Jacob Zuma, they're really building up, almost an opposition group within the ANC, using, Jacob Zuma is using his legal battles, his opposition to, his prosecution, and Ace Magashule his battles with the ANC, refusing to step down as according, by the instructions of the National Executive Committee of the ANC.
All right, Prof, I'm going to ask you to stay with us because at this point we are joined in the conversation by the ANC's Pule Mabe, who's just joined the conversation. Mr. Mabe, thank you so much for joining us. I would like to start, if I could, with a response from the ANC to what Mr. Ace Magashule said outside court and whether you consider this a violation of his suspension rules, which quite clearly say that he shouldn't speak in public.
Well, good evening and evening to your viewers. Of course, the ANC is watching all of these developments with interest. We have issued a statement today outlining the sort of actions that the ANC is already taking, including the opposition of the application put forward by the Secretary General to have his temporary suspension lifted. The ANC has already assembled a legal team made up of three senior counsels and one junior counsel, to make sure that they could then begin looking at what is being put before the court and making sure that the African National Congress is defended in that way. I'm sure all of the issues would be dealt with at that point. All other intervening structures of the African National Congress, whether it's the National Working Committee or the National Executive Committee, depending on which one would sit first, a reflection would have to be made, and the organization will have to then pronounce itself on the kind of decisions or measures that it wants to take henceforth.
All right. Mr. Mabe, just one quick follow-up question. I wanted to ask, do you consider that what he did today, does the ANC consider that a violation of his suspension rules or not?
Remember that because he has already put forward court papers in the manner that he does, it means that he himself would be taking a particular view as it relates to the decision of the African National Congress. That's why he has taken that decision to court. And the ANC, as a responsible party, has put forward a team to make sure that it could be able to then deal with the opposition of that kind of an application. And the team is already doing work.
I see. So am I correct in my understanding that your earlier call for him to apologize publicly now falls away because it's going to court?
Well, not that it falls away. He has said himself in the papers that he has put forward before the court that he wants the court to also advise or guide on that kind of for matter as well. So everything as matters then now, those issues then become sub judice. Because once you take issues to courts, it now means that you want the court to be able to pronounce themselves on what we would initially have thought that was an internal organizational matter. Hence, there's been a legal team put together by the African National Congress to be able to deal with all of the issues that are being raised in that application.
Could you update us on the internal appeals process on his suspension? Is that fallen away? Is that still underway?
Well, as matters stand now, I mean, the SG has elected to take the legal route. So you can't have many platforms trying to do one thing. It doesn't work like that. If you choose or elect to take the legal route, it means that you would have arrived at a different conclusion yourselves, that perhaps the best recourse you seek could be best ventilated or best achieved at a different level. So we will not have an appeal process in the organization at the same time be dealing with a matter that is already before the court.
He's claiming in his court papers that the ANC is targeting corruption accused for factional reasons, that actually there's an ideological difference, because actually there's a lot of people who have cases to answer. What is the ANC stance on that?
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear the first part of the question.
Yes. In his court papers, he's claiming that the ANC is actually targeting people like him, not so much because he's facing corruption charges, but more because he has an ideological difference in approach to people who are aligned to Cyril Ramaphosa. What is the ANC's response to that? Are there two very different ideological approaches in the party?
Well, I don't think that at this stage the ANC would not even want to get itself into the merits or demerits of the issues that are being raised in those papers. We've got a legal team which brings with it sufficient and appropriate experience to be able to do the necessary analysis and best represent what is the position of the African National.
All right. So he said... Sorry, you just broke up briefly there. Just end that sentence for me. Sorry.
Yes, I'm saying what I can say and restate now is that there is a great semblance of unity within the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. In fact, when the last National Executive Committee meeting of the ANC rose, there shall have been consensus in terms of the steps and measures that need to be taken. In the ANC, we always engage in robust engagement. You know, dynamic as the issues might be. But when we leave the meeting, we try and make sure that we forge a great sense of unity, which is not always easy, but we try and make sure that this organization of Nelson Mandela, pulls as one, because it is the only hope of the people of South Africa.
Well, he's said in his court papers that basically the ANC is about to split, that things have gone way past robust and things are falling apart. And you heard him today outside court saying, I will bring the whole Free State branches. I will bring them here. So he seems to think that he still wields an enormous amount of power within the ANC while he's challenging the ANC. Isn't this a problem for you?
Well, with the ANC, we didn't even want to enter into that space, really. You know, the ANC can't drag itself into that kind of a space. We're a self-respecting organization. There's a legal matter that is before us. The ANC has already come out to communicate the affirmation done by the national officials to oppose that kind of an application, because this is consistent with the decision taken by the last National Executive Committee meeting of the African National Congress. So in the intervening period, national officials ought to be seen holding the organization together and doing everything else possible well within their powers to make sure that decisions of the National Executive Committee are affirmed and realized and understood by everyone out in society.
While this court case goes on, do you still consider him suspended?
The National Executive, the decision of the NEC has not been suspended. The decision of the National Executive Committee still holds. The NEC is empowered by the Constitution of the African National Congress to take its own decisions and communicate.
Sorry, I think you misheard me. I meant the SG. Do you still consider Ace Magashule suspended because of the court process now?
It's not about what I consider. It's not, just to be clear, it's not about what we consider. The National Executive Committee has taken a decision. When you take a decision of the ANC to court, it doesn't mean you are suspending that decision. The decision is still in force. So the court process doesn't really suspend the decision of the National Executive Committee. The NEC is empowered by the Constitution to take and make decisions that allows it to direct the life of the organization in between conferences. And it does so as the highest decision-making body.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate it. Pule Mabe, who speaks for the ANC. And Prof. Gumede, you're back with us, I hope.
Yes, I'm back with you.
Sorry, and thank you for your patience. I just thought it would be quite interesting to hear what Pule Mabe has to say, and then we can perhaps reflect on it. So quite clear there that Ace Magashule remains suspended, even though he's challenging his suspension in court. And putting up sort of a brave face, saying that it's a robust party, we still have unity within the NEC. But if you read through Ace Magashule's court papers, this is a party on the brink of, at the very least, a splinter, but very likely a split. What do you think?
Yes, no, I agree with you. I mean, this is a party so divided. I think it's irreconcilable differences now between Magashule on the one hand and Ramaphosa on the other hand. And yes, of course, the NEC came out as a united front, you know, but it was very paper thin, unity. Most probably President Ramaphosa on that NEC, you know, is a very small majority. That is why Ace Magashule is so confident. Of course, Ace Magashule is also desperate, but I think he reflected accurately, at least Ace Magashule in his court papers, that how divided the ANC is. And I think him going to court is just one strategy among a number of strategies, because Ace Magashule appears to have multiple strategies. So the one is a court case, and I think secondly he's going to try to appeal to the ANC's internal processes, and then thirdly, you know, the mobilization of the branches, and then fourthly what he's going to try to do is to try to call for an early special conference of the ANC where, you know, the party could vote for new leaders. You know, that seems to be his multiple approach. And I think what has happened now, what we're seeing now, the new developments, combining forces publicly now with Jacob Zuma. You know, so we can see the beginnings here now of, you know, the future. If there's a split or a splinter, you know, this is the beginning of the mobilization, you know, the folk where it starts.
Do you think the ANC is right to be taking the approach they are? I mean, they're sort of saying, well, everything's now going to court, so we're not going to get too involved. Pule Mabe wouldn't be drawn on condemning what, to me, looked like a fairly clear violation of his suspension rules by speaking in public on behalf of the party, saying, I will bring all the Free State branches.
Yes, I mean, clearly, Ace Magashule has contravened now his, you know, his conditions, his suspension conditions. I mean, and not only that, by going to the court and appealing to the courts, clearly he is openly defying the National Executive Committee of the ANC. So what one should expect now is not for the NEC to say, well, we'll wait for the court process, but to suspend him. And so on. But clearly they're very careful, they're very cautious, and also afraid that you know, it's, as I said earlier, it's a majority. Ramaphosa has a majority, but Ace Magashule has a significant support in that NSC. So that is why, you know, they sort of handling him with a little bit, you know, the kid gloves, softly. And Ace Magashule also knows that, and he's going to push the envelope as far as he can get, and he's almost pushing them to expel him, and thinking, or rather reckoning, if they expel him, you know, his supporters will come to his support.
Yeah, that's interesting. It might be that he's pushing for them to do something that he can then say, well, you've broken the rules. You know, I was watching the court case today of Jacob Zuma, a sense of weariness. I mean, we're talking, the court case dates back over a decade, and this is the arms deal from 1999. You know, you kind of feel, in a way, if it's so hard to get someone accused of corruption to have his day in court, do you think Zuma's case will actually get underway? It looks like we have lost Prof. Gumede there. Very interesting chat we were having, but hopefully we can get him back, or we'll speak to him another day. That was, of course, the author and executive chairperson of Democracy Works from the Wits School of Governance, Professor William Gumede.